something that is common, that often happens. I can probably even say that's something that will happen. Is as we wake up and we experience our true nature, is that we'll have a glimpse. We'll have a glimpse for a moment. And then terror will show up. Or doubt will show up. Or a myriad of different things for us to instantly almost declare that whatever that moment was not good, not to do that again. Or whatever led to it, to not do that again. You know, it's something that's really common. Or even when hearing an idea, because sometimes if someone shares with you the truth about who you are, because we have established what we think we are, and because that's false, when it's challenged, it's going to resist, it's going to fight to maintain that position. We'll do another video on why, but for now, if we can just accept that that's something that happens. Because true self, true nature is presence purely, and it's really it's only really known when the mind is quiet and still. Eventually it can be known fully, and then the mind can be busy, but the habit to absorb into the mind doesn't exist anymore, so then mind can still play, and that draw into it doesn't happen anymore. But in order to establish that, it's important to acknowledge true self, and then the mind pulls something back in, pulls attention back in, and there's absorption again, and then that could go on for years, and then another moment happens of pure presence, and then the mind pulls something back in, the interest back in, and then and then maybe another divine moment 2 months later, maybe weeks, days, whatever it ends up being. But this is a process of unraveling, not that it's the only option for awakening. There could be large awakening moments that last for days, forever, who knows, but it's different for everybody. But these glimpses that we might get to know what's going to show up as we show up, as we have moments of realization of our truth, to know that the mind's going to attack that with fear. Fear is probably one of the strongest ones it's going to come up with, but in the beginning there might be just things like simple doubts like, I don't want to be useless in the world, I don't want to deny the enjoyments of and pleasures of the world. These are common ones that come up when realizations start to happen, or when you're sitting with someone who's communicating about it, about true being or true nature, because even just the inquiry about it, just having a conversation about it, is already challenging and already beginning to dissolve the power of the false sense of self. And so even in hearing that, the mind will take that and create things like doubts and all kinds of stories around why the doubt is legitimate and all that kind of stuff. And it's important to know that in the beginning it probably will end up being doubt, maybe a little fear, but if the doubt is conquered and then we continue and persist on the path, fear will inevitably come. And fear may be one of the last things that come through that the mind uses to keep its position. And it's good to know that this is going to show up. It's good to know that we can move through the fear, that we can keep going, keep those moments happening, keep allowing those moments to happen for as long as possible, and stay there. Even if fear lures you, just know that it's a lure back into the mind space. And you can prove it, even if you don't even have to believe it, but watch it happen as your divine moments occur, as you have moments of pure presence, of a glimpse at your pure self, your truest self, which is purely present. It's purely here, now, all the time. It's empty of thought. It's empty of concept, of form, of identification with anything particular. It's empty of personhood, the story that's been carried out through your life and many lifetimes, all of your karma. All of that is gone when you're purely present and in your own truth perfectly. And know in those moments that these things, the mind will come through with things to pull you back out of, or pull the interest back out of that space. There's a part of us that gets pulled. There's a part of us that's the truth, that is, that never moves, that never shifts, that never gets pulled. It's pure all the time and blissful all the time. But there's another layer of self that's very subtle. It's just the simple, basic sense of I exist. And that's the part that kind of gets drawn and pulled, because it starts as I exist, amazing, and it's beautiful. And then it's I exist, and then something else shows up, and there's an emotion or a feeling or an interest in something in the world that's happening. Ooh, there's a bird. And then all of a sudden there's this whole movement of thought, and before you know it, there's this disregard for your eternal blissful self. And we totally forget. And then it's not until the mind gets quiet again that I sense can settle, resolve, and maybe even dissolve. But it's even rare to do that. To get to that pure sense of I is an attainment in itself before I become a man or a woman, or before I become something that needs to do something in this world, that has to have, has to have purpose and all that kind of stuff before any of that shows up. And not that any of that stuff is bad, but before any of that shows up, that pure sense of I exist can experience the essence of the true self. And if that first I sense dissolves even, then we are pure being, without anything kind of stacked on top of it, So hopefully that made sense. But the point of this was to acknowledge and know that the mind is going to fight against your awakening. To know that, and it's going to create all kinds of distractions, all kinds of concepts and ideas, even about what you might learn that would set you free. It'll take that stuff too, and warp it and shift it and mess with it, to create just enough mind to maintain a false identity. And that's what this is all about, is what are we identifying with? If we're identifying with anything but the pure, eternal, perfect, divine, blissful essence of self, truest, purest self. If we're identifying with anything but that, then we cause bondage, we cause suffering for ourselves and for others. And to know that how subtle these false identities go as well, how subtle these false senses of who I am go. It's as simple and basic as I'm here and you were there. I'm on this side of the camera and you're listening to it. That is, I have a sense of personal identity that's not a universal oneness. And anything but that is not our true self. So to know this is good, because we have clear, visibility of what we are not, when we are not. If I have any trace of duality within me, then I'm not in my purest center. And just to know that is okay. It doesn't mean like we pick apart everything we do and say, but our awareness is all that really matters, because we can continue to speak just like everybody else and have all these, I am a man, I can say that, but I know, and I never forget that I am not that I am pure, eternal being. We can go branch off of this in many ways, but I think for today, it's good. Know the mind is going to try all kinds of different things. Know that if you're experiencing if you're having an experience of, I am feeling this, you are not the one that feels. The part that feels is the mind. The mind is feeling the karma, right? You are untouched by the karma. You, in truth, don't feel anything except for your own blissful self and nature and essence. Love, kindness, compassion come from true being. And then if you're feeling anger, you are not angry. Anger is showing up as a symptom of karma. Depression, you are not depressed. You are pure eternal being, but depression is showing up because there's a part of the mind that is attached somewhere or averted to something. And that's it. Not to identify with any of that stuff. And this, we can even word it and speak it in this way of depression is showing up on the screen of awareness. Anger is arising and nothing needs to be done about it. Just acknowledging anger is arising. Maybe some stories start to loop about why the anger is there. Don't worry about the stories. Allow the feeling to be there, because the feeling is the karma wanting to come out. The feeling rises up and a life experience triggers that feeling to come out. See it for exactly what it is. It's anger. It's a detachment somewhere. What am I believing in that's not real? What am I holding on to that I don't need to hold on to anymore? What am I trying to push away that I could allow to show me something? So it's good to get clear on all these things. You know, the part of us that feels anything is that sense of I. So there's the true self, and then from that true self, the first thing that arises is I exist. Our true being, the true self, is eternal and in everything. But as aliveness, as life exists in a body of a conscious being, the first thing that happens is I exist, an acknowledgement of existence, of creation. Consciousness is aware in this body. And then from that, an emotion comes up, and that I exist turns into I am depressed, you know, and all that. And as the story rolls on and on and on, it gets more entangled in that sense of identity. And this is what we're attempting to resolve. This is the medicine for everything in life. This is the remedy for everything that we might suffer from. Every single thing. It's incredible. It's incredible. This is the only thing we need. Anything else that we might do that might make us feel better could be temporary. This is a permanent resolution for everything. This is the seed of enlightenment, is this very thing right here. And it's easy to dance around it, but this is the core. This is the end. And don't believe me, try it. Try it, and it takes time to really for this to settle. Again, it can take years, it could take lifetimes, it could take a day, it could take a moment. It all depends on how tight the mind is holding and how much we believe the mind and what it's saying. That's why this awareness is so helpful. You know, when we have knowledge of these things, then we can begin to test it out. We can test the knowledge. This is what's important about this path, is we can test the knowledge out. We can say, okay, I have this knowledge of karma, and I have this knowledge of feelings are the symptoms of karma, and I have this knowledge of interaction with others. Okay, and then as we live our life, we test it out and see what happens when we apply this. So the karma arose, and I stayed still. I didn't identify. I even spoke. I started to identify and then spoke. I am not that. I am eternal being. And then you can see it for what it is and let it go. And you'll still feel it. Try to pull, but keep acknowledging who you truly are. Keep acknowledging who you truly are and disregarding that pull to identify. Okay? And that's the important part, to kind of disregard and stay still. The feelings and emotions themselves are really to be embraced. because otherwise we like push them aside or push them down and we try to get rid of them. These are like, it's actually more important to welcome the feeling, because that's really what's going to the key that's going to open up and allow everything to be released is the embracing of the feeling. Because that's our typical relationship, is we feel something uncomfortable, we feel something yucky, we feel an emotion, and we want to like get rid of it. Oftentimes we want to dump it on somebody else and give it to them. But for us to really embrace it, and it's easy to embrace everything. It's easy to be with everything as it is when we're centered in our truth, right? I know if I'm not identified with it, it's easy to be with. It's easy. It's the most natural and beautiful thing in our life. So we can do that. And that's something that's really important also. The disregard is in the identity with it, but we embrace the feeling and everything for coming. So as to not suppress it and push it down, because that's part of the attachment, is to stuff it down and everything that goes along with that. This, I could tell you, is one of the most remarkable things you'll ever discover. It may be the most remarkable thing that you'll ever discover. And as your mind begins to unravel, and these subtle little moments expand into larger moments, and then more often, and then before you know it, thank you. Namaste.